Welcome everybody. We are a small group, so we're going to be kind of informal this evening. My name is Jody Hoover. I am the Digital Resources Manager here at Enoch Pratt Free Library, and I am joined by my colleague, Megan, who will introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Megan Keene. I am the Digital Projects Librarian, and I work primarily on Digital Maryland, which transcription this is for.
So a little bit about the project that we're asking for help on. Oh, so before I forget, you are welcome to ask questions via the chat. We'll be able to take a look at that. If you want to raise your hand and unmute and ask a question, you can, but we'll have time for questions at the end. So chat might be less disruptive while we're doing an initial talk through. And with that, let's go to the next slide. All right, so just a little bit about the Digital Maryland project. Digital Maryland is a statewide collaborative digitization project. So we work with libraries, historical societies, museums, and even private individuals to identify unique collections that speak to the history and culture of Maryland. Once we have identified collections, we work with those institutions to figure out the best way that we can provide access to those materials through scanning, training, and of course, providing access on the Digital Maryland platform. So we can go to the next slide. So Digital Maryland, the first Digital Maryland collections went live in 2004, and the program has continued to expand. We have over 100 partner organizations, over 140 collections online. Continued support for the project comes from the State Library Resource Center grant from the Maryland General Assembly, and we are physically based in Central Library in Baltimore. Can move on. And just to give you like kind of an idea of the scope of what we have, because obviously history and culture of Maryland is really broad. So for example, we have recently worked with DC Public Library and a group of community activists to present a large collection of Black Lives Matter protest signs. One of our other recent collections is the Saunders B. Kramer lantern slide collection. So that is lantern slides related to space exploration from a particular scientist and inventor that worked with Lockheed Martin. So those slides are really beautiful. And then if you want to go ahead. So we also have a recent collection from McDonough School. So these are letters and photographs from soldiers who served in World War I that they wrote to one of the headmasters at the school, and he carefully saved all of this correspondence. So we've been working with them to present this online, and the first portion of this collection is now live for people to see. So you can see that we have a wide range of materials that are available. But today we are asking your help for your help with a specific set of materials. So we can move forward. So we have a set of ledger books from the Mutual Benefit Society of Baltimore. This is from the collection of the Reginald F. Lewis Museum of Maryland African American History and Culture. So in 2020, we started working with the museum to digitize these ledgers and present them on Digital Maryland. forward. So the Mutual Benefit Society of Baltimore is an insurance company that operated in Baltimore from 1903 to 1977 when it was purchased by another company. It was founded by Harry O'Neill Wilson Sr. He was a successful African-American banker, real estate developer, and philanthropist. The Mutual Benefit Society provided weekly sick benefits, death benefits, and health insurance primarily for the African American community in Baltimore and Maryland. The building is still on Franklin Street and has the company name on the front. It's been for sale for some time. I'm not sure if it is currently occupied, but you can definitely see the building. Can move forward. As I mentioned, Harry O'Neill Wilson Sr. was an incredibly influential person in Baltimore and Maryland. His former home is in the Wilson Park neighborhood, which he actually developed starting in 1917 to provide the suburban experience that was denied most Black families at that time. You know, if you are familiar at all with the history of Baltimore, you know, there's a history of redlining and of segregation. And so he really worked to provide an environment that had access to single family homes and a suburban lifestyle for the African American community. The home is designated as a landmark by the Baltimore City Commission for Historic and Archival Preservation, or Architectural Preservation rather, in 2017. His bank was one of the only ones not to close during the Depression. And he was also very active in Baltimore City politics. He served on many commissions, often as the only African-American representative. He died in 1939 at the age of 66. So if we move forward. So these ledger books from the Mutual Benefit Society, we are focusing on 2 ledgers. That third ledger book is more of a, we might at some point transcribe it, but it's more of a general cash in, cash out, accounts payable for a business. So it doesn't contain quite the same type of information that the other 2 do. So the first ledger in our project is called the Life Register, and it documents life insurance policies opened from March 1918 through September 1919. You know, some of the things it includes, you can sort of see on the screen. So the member that opened the policy, their address, the beneficiary, and the dates for when they opened it. Can move on. The death register documents insurance claims paid out by the Mutual Benefit Society between June of 1938 and December of 1947. So the handwritten information includes the name of the deceased, address, place of death, the physician's name, address of the physician, age at the time of death, the dates, the beneficiary, address, and to whom the claim was paid, which interestingly enough is often the same as the beneficiary, but sometimes the beneficiary would designate someone else. So there's more names than you would think. It also includes the cause of death for each of the claims paid. So both of these ledgers contain a wealth of information that would be incredibly useful for genealogists. And again, these were primarily from the African American community. So it's information that is often difficult to get to in other ways. And there's also potential for other sorts of research as well, just because of the amount of detailed information, particularly, the cause of death, where people died, those sorts of things. However, as the ledgers are handwritten, they're currently not searchable. So while they're scanned and on our site, they're not as useful as we want them to be. And so finding the relevant information would involve kind of reading through this whole thing. And that's where you all come in. We can go to the next slide, Megan. We have set these up with a crowdsource transcription website called From the Page that will allow us to have volunteers from all over work on these books so that we can make them as available as possible. And now Megan is going to walk you through some information about the project and how it works.
Absolutely. Thank you. Is my microphone on?
Yes.
Okay, great. As you're following along, most of the information that I'm going to be talking about is actually available in a little handout. I believe Jody has a link and can put it in the chat if you need to follow through, but this will be available tonight and in general, whenever you may need it, if you work on this project. So when you first go to fromthepage.com, the front splash screen will look like this. And in order to transcribe, you will need an account, but it's completely free. I have already made one, so I'm just going to sign in as normal. The links to the Digital Maryland projects are already in the handout, but if you want to get to it on from the page directly or any other project, you go to the Find a Project section. It'll come up with a nice little selection, and all you need to do is search Digital Maryland. And it will come up with our two registers that are in two separate projects because the formatting of the page is a little different and there's different information that we want to get from each of them. So open that one in a new tab. Now we'll start with this life register, the life register first, because it's a bit more straightforward. Entering a collection will show you this overview page with a little bit more about the project and the institution itself and the work itself. There's only one because there's just this ledger at the moment. Clicking on the name of the ledger will bring you to the pages, and you can see some that have already been completed here and that need review. But if you want to get straight to the ones that need transcription, there's a handy page here that will filter it for you. And then you can just choose the first one, choose a random one, whatever you may need. So all you do is you click on the image and here we are. I think we have the layout set to automatically put the image at the top of the screen, but if it's not, then you just choose image at the top so that you can see the page above the fields that we need entered in. So a quick little demo, putting in the year, 2018. Working along. The thing about these pages is that they are quite long, so you will have to be rotatable. Zoom in and watch as you go across the rows. We have a nice little tab bar up here, which I will get to in a minute, but the most important one, other than this transcribe tab where you work on the fields, is the help tab, which will not take you away from the page, though you will probably have to save your work. I'm not sure if it gets lost between tabs, but it is a quick way to access the transcribing conventions that we have which are specifically for this project and what we're looking for. I think one of the important things to point out is that we do want to transcribe things exactly as they're seen, including abbreviations and or misspellings. Including these abbreviations, genealogists will know that's something to search for William and things. Right now we're just trying to get basic names, basic information for genealogical research. Anything at this point is going to be so much more helpful than just having images of this ledger. So any attempt that you want to make at this is greatly appreciated. So absolutely no pressure to do the hundreds of pages that we have. So yes, abbreviations, follow down with ditto marks, more detailed field information, which are quite consistent across books in the both death and the life register. Another thing I want to point out is that if you're not sure with text, then you would put it in brackets, either with a question mark with your best guess or illegible. These brackets help point out things during the review stage. So now that we've gone over conventions and kind of gotten a sense of what we're looking for, we'll go back to, go back to the transcribe tab and have a go at this top row. Yes, okay, so it did take out the years that I put in. So if you make any progress, even just this, and you want to go back to that help tab, this save button up here is really important because it does not automatically save as you work on a page. And this done button is only for when the page is completely done and that it's ready for review and someone else to look at. But just saving your progress, whatever you do, is good enough for someone else to come and pick it up later, or you can pick it up later. But definitely, it's very important to remember to save, because it will not do that for you. Here we go. The actual fields will look like a spreadsheet. So name of member, first and middle, Marcella, Johnny. And here we have notes in the member fields. This life register in particular has a lot of beneficiary and name changes that kind of go across multiple columns, and that's what we have these notes section for. Name changed July 15, 1922. Marcella. Let me see. That looks like Tillman to me. I'm going to put that in there. Age 24. Address. And we would continue along. All the way across. You can zoom in. You can rotate. Even looks like you can adjust the brightness and contrast of a page if you need to. Let's see. Beneficiary. Boop. Scrolling across. First, middle, last name, and then notes again. That is where we would put beneficiary changed. 1842. Of course, you would fill in all these things across. Anything that has a field and is a blank, we would fill in. Just don't want to get too redundant. As the good thing about this project is that it's very straightforward. What you see on the page is just what you need to type into the columns. Oh, I made a little typo. Beneficiary. Okay.
And I'm going to jump in 1 second and say, we know that we are not transcribing all of the columns. In talking to historians and other people who have worked on similar projects, it was decided to pull out specifically the names and some of this information that we thought would be the most readily beneficial, so that you could come, once they're searchable, you can come back and take a look and fill in some of the other information. But for now, just be aware that we are not transcribing all of the available fields.
Great. And as you're working, you can have this help tab available. If you do need a refresher on the columns that we're looking for and what we're looking for in each column. And if you do end up having questions, oh, it's at the bottom too. If you do have notes and questions, you can type that in here. And that's something that we can look at on our end, behind the scenes, during review. It's also public for any other volunteers that come and work on this page. So it's really good for adding notes and questions, and some other pages also in case they have tears or folds that will possibly be noted in that section as well, in case there's anything else to be aware of. So that is the life register. Any progress you make, save. Little green bar, very helpful. And in case that there is a blank page, in which mostly for these ledgers will be the covers, the front and back covers, things like that, there's also a mark as blank button. Going over to the death register now, which is a bit more in depth. We have the same process of clicking on the name of the work. Here we can see how the page was labeled blank. Pages that need transcription. And here we have available pages to transcribe. Now this one, the pages are much longer, so it will be a little trickier to keep yourself on the same row, but sometimes you can kind of keep an eye on, okay, as we're going across, we'll follow the amount collected number across. One thing to note, that while you're working on these pages, the handwriting will start to come together more as you get used to the handwriting. So things that may have seemed confusing at first, Cornish, will actually seem to make sense later on. So in this case, I'm making my best guess. This handwriting, Rock, Malkin. We have the brackets and the question mark if we're not sure.
You are off. Yeah, so you're in.
Oh, you are so right.
This
you
is
are
a thing.
So right. Yeah, look, great demonstration of how you of paying attention to the column that you're in. Cornish.
And again, like we really,
Yes.
we went back and forth on some of this stuff, but because we're going to be able to download these finished pages as Excel sheets, and bumping the last name into a separate column means we'll be able to sort. It was decided that we would make that split, even though it's not strictly what you see, in order to make the resulting data as useful as possible. So it is important to kind of, you know, keep track and double check yourself as much as possible.
Yes, and that is something else to note, is that these pages are going to be reviewed after they're completed. So even if there is a slight mistake, it will be checked. So no, it's not a huge pressure of getting everything perfect as well. So here already, the handwriting is different from the first ledger. And so I have a few more question marks and things going across here, but that's totally normal. And you may find that as you go, the handwriting starts to make sense. Just from working with these ledgers, I know that it kind of looks like an L and an E, but that is actually a C for Cornish. But also see how Josephine Walker kind of comes in. For the cause of death field, any attempt is appreciated. We know that these terms can kind of be quite complicated and not words that we're used to spelling. So any attempt at necrosis is my guess there. And Googling it is also something that you can do as well to see what comes up. Again, saving my progress. Don't want anything to get lost. And that's essentially all you're doing throughout the pages. If you don't feel like working on this page anymore, there's arrow buttons that'll direct you to the next page chronologically. And when a page is fully complete, that is when you hit the green done button. The green button will mark it for review, which is something that we can find by filtering with this button. And it will pull up all pages that all the fields have been attempted. We can see with the brackets that these are good guesses or fills in that maybe this person isn't quite sure of, something to take a look at. This is actually how the transcriptions will be formatted. It comes up in a table, which will later be an Excel spreadsheet for us to sort. And clicking on a page that needs review will bring you to the overview tab. This is a little more different than the layout for actual transcribing, as you don't quite see the a view adjustment button and don't have quite the same controls, but at the same time, you're still just checking from work someone else has done. And at this point, it's easier to go down columns if you feel like it. You're not as trying to stay across the rows as much. Checking it this way, the transcribe text will not let you edit because it needs review. But essentially, oops, I should go back. Essentially, if it does turn out that everything is okay, then it can be approved. Will it not let you make changes? Okay, so no, I have not done any reviewing. But yes, so now the page can be edited with anything that you might notice, any changes. And then once, you know, it's had that second pair of eyes on it, then it can be approved. I don't do that just yet because it has not, I hadn't gone through all of it, but then it is marked as complete on the ledger overview. And that will update the, this little green bar down here. It actually shows you how much of it is completed and how much is needing review or complete. See? And once you're signed in, you don't need to go through that whole process of finding the works again. You can go to your collaborator dashboard and it'll show you the things that you've worked on, including your activity, what you've been working on, if there's any notes or replies to your notes. So once you get started, logged in and working on any of these collections, you'll be able to come and pick up your progress pretty easily. And this is completely volunteer oriented. So as much or as little time as you feel like you can put in, we're absolutely grateful for anything that you can help us with this project and making this genealogical information more accessible. I believe I have covered the basics. I will hand it over to Jody in case I have forgotten anything. And she will also be able to share some tips and tricks that she's figured out through her practice. Okay, screen. There we go. Not a time slideshow anymore.
On
Or not. Or did it not? It did not. Okay. You just have to brave the slideshow.
go into view. There you go. And slideshow. Yay. We, like I said, we will have plenty of time for questions and we can go back in. But just a couple of things that I know come up. And Megan definitely talked about this, but save often. And the done button is when the page is fully transcribed. If you hit the done button and the page is not completely done, it's fine. We will actually catch that, or you can send us a note and be like, oh, hey, it doesn't need review. So it's not, you know, it's certainly all things are fixable. But I have repeatedly marked a page for review that is not actually ready for review. Definitely make note of the questions and add notes at the bottom of the page. If you have a question about it, probably someone else does as well. It will help us update our help section. And we do get notifications as those notes come in. So we will try to keep an eye on things and, you know, be as responsive as we can. Want to click forward. Again, Megan kind of talked about this, but just to show you, you do sort of get a sense of the handwriting as you move through. So I very specifically remember looking at this where that first C, I was like, I don't know what that is. And then a little bit later, I'm like, okay, well, that's probably Calhoun Street, and it is confirmed by that being Baltimore City Hospital. And now I know what this person's handwriting looks like when they make a C. And so I found a lot as I worked on the pages, like I'd go back and correct things even on the same page, just as I got used to the handwriting. So if at first you're making more guesses than you would like, just know that, you know, the more you do it, the easier it gets, and you can always go back and correct stuff. So with the death register in particular, you tend to get a little lost as you cross the gutter. And again, just because there is a lot of information that we are not transcribing. So I found it really useful to always sort of double check on the row above, which really helped not getting off track in that way. And we can, there we go. So I know you know, when you're transcribing, it's like you're supposed to type what you see. But you know, Google can be your friend. So definitely in the cases of the cause of death and also sometimes street names. I've lived in Baltimore for a while, but even so, there were street names that I'm like, is that here? And I would actually use Google to verify my best guess. And so if I couldn't verify, I would use the brackets and a question mark with like, this is as good as I could get. If it's like, oh, that is a street, and now the spelling makes sense, I would go with that. Very similar for the cause of death. You know, where I'm like, does that say Bright's and heart disease? And then I would Google Bright's and I'm like, oh, that is how kidney disease would have been described. So yes, I am confident that my transcription is correct in this case. So, you know, you don't have to disappear down a rabbit hole, and I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it, but sometimes, you know, I would flip back and forth with confirming different spellings that way. And particularly with the death register, it's a lot. It's kind of heavy. You know, I went through one page and I'm like, everybody on this page passed away before the age of 60. So be aware, be kind to yourself. There are a lot of other projects on the From the Page platform that you could also explore. I've put up two that are Maryland related. So the Maryland State Archives is working on marriage certificates for the city of Baltimore, which are not searchable currently. So they've been working through that project. And Sandy Spring Museum in Montgomery County is one of our Digital Maryland partners. So they are doing a lot of transcription projects through From the Page that will eventually all of that work will also make it to Digital Maryland. So, you know, while this is about our project and we definitely need help with it, you know, there's plenty of other things to explore and work on as well. And we want to, I think, stop here and take questions. And you can unmute and ask your question, or you can put it in the chat. So where do we register to transcribe? Megan, do you want to flip back to From the Page? So this is From the Page, fromthepage.com. Let me, do you want to talk about it again, just a little bit, the sign up process, Megan? I'll put
Sure.
the link in the chat.
As you come into From the Page as a new user, all you do is you sign up to transcribe. All you'll need is a username, an email address, and your real name if you feel like it. As it says, it gives you credit. And then just a little CAPTCHA. Activity emails will update you on projects or more activity on projects that you've been working on. And then it's just creating an account. Since I already have one, I will sign in. And as a few people came in a little late, I will just go over this, finding the project really quickly. As a new user, you can find the links on the handout that Jody's linked in the chat, or you go to the Find a Project tab and simply search Maryland. And you will see our two registers show up here. Just clicking into one will give you an overview, and then clicking into a work will show you all the pages, and then this button to filter on the pages that still need transcription. And once you work on any page at all in this collection, going back to your dashboard when you're signed in will easily show you a layout of all of the projects that you've worked on, specific pages you've worked on, and other activity related to your projects.
All right, other questions?
And this project is live and public on From the Page. So any user on From the Page can transcribe our ledgers here, just as you can transcribe any project on From the Page.
I also want to give a quick hello to Kaylee, who was a former employee at the Reginald F. Lewis Museum, and this project is available because she advocated for it. So hello, I'm glad you could be here and see how it's going. How many pages are there to transcribe? I think in the death register, there's over 200. Yeah, so 296. Yeah.
In the death register.
In about each of them, it's about that much. So we're talking potentially thousands and thousands of names that would be available and searchable. But yeah, it's a big project. And that's why we chose to present it this way. Because, Digital Maryland staff is small. So for us to try to transcribe it in-house would be, it would be impossible. Yeah, so this is, Glenn asked if it can be done anytime, and it absolutely can. So this is available on the web. You can work on it whenever you have some time or the inclination to do so. And then we, on the back end, we can see that progress is being made. And like I said, we will answer questions and try to help people through. We are generally around during the week. So if you asked a question at 4 a.m. on a Saturday, we're not going to get to you till Monday.
But for additional help or questions, we do have our email address at the bottom. I think it's listed at the bottom of every page as well. If you do feel like there's something that you need to reach out for, absolutely.
And another question was asking for a specific time commitment. We are not. This is very much volunteer. And so as much or as little as you feel you are able to contribute, if you decide it is not your thing, that's fine too. If you know of other people who might be interested in working on it, please pass it along. And we've only just opened it up this week. There's also a lot of from the page volunteers who are already in place. So I have seen people sort of starting to work on it. So yeah, truthfully, this is just purely volunteer.
Yep, any amount of time, and there's also no deadline that we're trying to get this done by either. So.
Again, so the question was recommend if we start a fresh page or pick up where someone else left off. Right now that's very much open. I would say that the life register is maybe a little bit easier and straightforward to work on. The death register is like very information dense. So, if you wanted to get started on something that's maybe a little more straightforward, that might be a good place to start. As far as picking up on someone else's page or starting, currently we have plenty of pages. So that would really be up to you. And then, if you decide that reviewing pages is more your style, reviewing is currently up to volunteers as well. We're just hoping to have 2 people look at each page. And we are going to try to do a lot of reviewing here on our end, but again, we are also a small staff and have a lot of projects going on. So, any help is very much appreciated. Do we have other questions? Thank you. All right. So real quick as a wrap up, if we hop back into the slideshow, if you want to know more about Digital Maryland and digitization projects in general, Megan and I are going to be doing a program next Wednesday at 7 o'clock. And we're going to talk about digitization projects in general, sort of the pros and cons of them. And then we will specifically talk about how we digitize things here at Digital Maryland, and we will talk a little bit more about that project. So if that's of interest, please go ahead and join us next week. With that, we will wrap up this particular event. Again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And happy transcribing. Please pass the project along to anyone else that you think might be interested, and have a good rest of your night.
Have a good Friday and weekend, everyone.